समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या? समझ में नहीं आया।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉपअप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
अब समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
One thing you cannot blame Modi government for is not finding imaginative names for things they do. The plans, the schemes, even the laws. We just saw VB, G Ramji. That's for what used to be Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. Now they've come up with something else. It's a new law. It's a landmark law. It's a landmark law because it subsumes all the nuclear laws in the country, all the laws dealing with nuclear power, nuclear technology, nuclear production, research, mining, research, etc., etc. All of the laws have been collapsed into one law. What's the law called? It's called Sustainable Harnessing and Advancement of Nuclear Energy from Transforming India Bill, or SHANTI Bill. Now SHANTI Act. It will become SHANTI Act. Parliament has passed it. Once the President gives it her assent, it will become an act. Now, why do we say this bill has an interesting name? Because it is called Shanti Act. This acronym adds up to Shanti. S comes from sustainable, H from harnessing, A from advancement, C on your screen, N for nuclear energy, and T from transforming, and I, of course, for India. Shanti Bill. Now, compare it with what the UPA government had come up with in 2010 with some similar objectives, or at least addressing similar issues. Now, I will take you back to 2010. In 2008, 2005, Dr. Manmohan Singh signed the India-US nuclear deal, civil nuclear deal. That was the first one. Although talks had started in the Vajpayee era. Talks had started after Pokhran 2 tests between Jaswant Singh and Strobe Talbot. That is when the seed was planted. Dr. Manmohan Singh and George Bush signed the Indo-US nuclear deal in 2005. It was finally put to the test in Parliament when the opposition, including the BJP, it was a very strong opposition, combined opposition. So the BJP and the left and Mayawati and the rest combined to challenge Manmohan Singh government. Remember, at that point of time, the UPA also depended on the left parties. The left parties said they will have nothing to do with it. They will not support the Manmohan Singh government because of the nuclear deal, and they will also vote against it. As an act of defiance, then, Dr. Manmohan Singh sought a vote of confidence and won it. Many things were said in that debate, including by BJP leaders, and it is at that time that some of us who were supporting the nuclear deal, without a doubt, supporting the nuclear deal, we had said that in the course of time, BJP will also come and back it, and BJP will actually adopt it. Once they get power, they will see the benefits in it. They already see the benefits in it, but right now they will oppose it for the heck of it because it's the UPA that's doing it. 2008, that bitter fight in Parliament took place. A follow-up to that was, if this was to be about nuclear energy, I will explain this for you. Those of us at that point who strongly supported the Indo-US nuclear deal, we said that this isn't just about energy. This isn't just about energy. This is about repositioning India strategically, because this was the first agreement with wide, deep strategic dimensions that India had signed with the Americans in our entire history. This was a big turning point in the way India looked at the world, and this was necessary and this was essential after the end of the Cold War. And now almost a decade had passed since the end of the Cold War and rise of the unipolar world. That was one argument, because the deal signified India's shift towards the West, that India was no longer in the Soviet camp because there was no Soviet camp, and India could now see the West, particularly America, as friends. That was one part of it. The second part of the deal was nuclear energy, that India's energy needs were going up. India's growth was rising, India's citizens were consuming too little power, India's industry needed more power. All of this could not be produced from thermal sources or hydel sources. Solar at that time was not that efficient and not that widespread. So India will need nuclear energy, which is the cleanest source of energy, cleanest and also lasts a long time. Once you set up a nuclear plant, it lasts a very, very, very long time. So why not nuclear? That nuclear was not possible because after Pokhran 1 and Pokhran 2, India was subjected to nuclear apartheid, which means India would get no nuclear technology. Indian scientists had no access to foreign laboratories, foreign conferences. Indian scientists could not publish papers in international journals. Also, India could get no more nuclear fuel and a lot of other technology and scientific instrumentation. In fact, a nuclear suppliers group came into being, NSG, which then had its own rules about who they could supply anything nuclear with, at least legally. That did not stop China, North Korea, etc. from giving stuff illegally to Pakistan, and then Pakistan in turn from illegally selling it to whoever. Those stories have been documented in full-fledged books, but we are not going there. We are India, so we were concerned about the situation with India. So for Indian nuclear energy sector to grow, that nuclear apartheid had to be lifted. That was the second part of the nuclear deal. And if that happened, India will then start building more nuclear energy, which means more foreign companies will also come in. This would need enormous investment. Obviously, India did not have that kind of money. Also, India wasn't making reactors of that capacity. Until then, the most powerful reactors that India was installing were being imported from the Soviet Union and then Russia. These are like Kudankulam reactors in Tamil Nadu, about 1,000 megawatts each. India's own reactors at that point, pressurized heavy water reactors, which were our own technology, were about 220 megawatts each, toy reactors by today's definition. So the idea was, once India is out of this apartheid, then these big companies will come. Land was acquired, a big Jatapur complex in Maharashtra, a big parcel of land in Hisar in Haryana, some others also, that these big nuclear power parks will come up, producing 10,000, 12,000 megawatts in one location. However, none of that happened. What is the reason none of that happened? Because the opponents of the nuclear deal and the opponents of India's westward shift had lost their argument philosophically, ideologically, but most importantly, politically, with that vote of confidence, and after that with the return of the UPA in larger numbers, where the Congress also got larger numbers. So the idea which many in the Congress quietly were also whispering that this deal is a bad idea because India's Muslims will not like the nuclear deal because this means India is getting closer to America. Now the deal was passed because this battle was lost in Parliament. In fact, Asad Owaisi, Mulayam Singh Yadav, they all stood up in support of the deal. Also, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam had issued a statement in support of the deal. That is the perspective that we need to understand before we go any forward. In 2010, 2 years had passed since this deal, and after winning the election for the second time in 2009, Congress party had turned on its own government because they were not happy to see Manmohan Singh doing so well. They had started questioning everything that Manmohan Singh was doing, putting adangas in the way on each one of his decisions, including the fight against Maoists in Bastar. Even that was blocked. Operation Green Hunt, whether it was called that or not, it acquired that name. That was stopped because the Congress party did not like that. Congress party would rather make some deals, and Congress party would rather look for root causes of Maoism than fight it. It was in that situation that the opposition now thought, opposition outside the Congress and opposition also within the Congress, that they had got their opportunity to thwart the benefits of the nuclear deal. At least one set of benefits they could not thwart because India and America were coming closer increasingly. But the other set, that India will now start producing more nuclear energy, that they will stop. And if that meant more Western companies coming and producing power in India, nuclear power in India, that also they will thwart. That was done through another law. The CLND Act was passed on August 30 in Rajya Sabha. Lok Sabha voted it first. In Rajya Sabha, August 30, 2010. Now, what was that law? Now, that law was passed on 12th August 2010. Now, the essence of the nuclear deal was that foreign companies should be able to come and set up nuclear plants in India. Indian private sector should be able to raise capital and produce nuclear power in India. However, whenever you carry out industrial activity, even if you drive an Uber car, there is a liability because somebody might be hurt, there can be an accident. So for everything, there is a liability and there is a compensation. So what should be the compensation in case of a nuclear accident? Now, this is not an amount that can be kept finite. You can say it can be billions of dollars, you can say it can be tens of billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. The amount of compensation can never be limited. We have to understand that basic fact. However, on whom will the liability lie? Once again, let me simplify it. You may buy the best car in the world. I don't know what's the best car in the world. You choose your own brand, maybe Lamborghini. People sing lots of songs about Lamborghini. So I'm vaguely picking it up. Somebody is driving a Lamborghini. I'm not saying you. Somebody is driving a Lamborghini carelessly and runs over a half dozen people, laborers, sleeping by the roadside. That is not the Lamborghini's fault, right? That is the driver's fault. So liability lies with the driver. Suppose something happens in that Lamborghini or any other car. I don't want Lamborghini to come and sue me tomorrow, but any car, even Lamborghini, a car as good as that, expensive is not necessarily good always. With that proviso out, suppose something breaks. It's a new car, but the transmission breaks. The brakes fail because somebody forgot to put some rivets or something someplace, and the car loses control, driver loses control, and people get killed. That liability then can go to the manufacturer. I am using a very simple example, even simplistic, to explain a very complex thing to you because that is the essence of cut the clutter. When Manmohan Singh government came up with this law, by that time activists, the opposition, and the opposition even within the Congress party, they had started spreading enormous amounts of scare about nuclear power, that what will happen tomorrow. Can you imagine a Chernobyl will happen tomorrow? Can you imagine a 3 Mile Island will happen tomorrow? Can you imagine if Fukushima will happen tomorrow? Now, Fukushima is not something that happened right then. Fukushima actually happened a few months later. But this again, within the same debate, it kept feeding into it, and that made it impossible for any foreign company to come into India. What was the minefield that Parliament created then? In 2010 August, Parliament passed a law. That was a liability law. So once again, you're going to buy this Lamborghini and drive it in your Uber or whatever service in India, so people will benefit from it. But if something goes wrong when you're driving that car or providing that service, who is to be held liable? Are you, as operator of the car, going to be held liable, or is the manufacturer who sold you the car is going to be held liable? That same principle came in argument with that law, and it was then said that law was seeded with a mine within, with an explosive mine within. That was clause 17B in that law. That 17B said, while other clauses said that the operator had a liability, and the operator's liability was fixed at 1500 crores at the top. That too on the demand of Jaswant Singh of BJP, it was going to be 1000 crores. 1500 crores. Now you will say, what is 1500 crores for a nuclear disaster? I will explain to you. Besides that, the operator could also claim liability from the supplier, and that was unlimited. That was clause 17B. Once they put that in, why do I call it a minefield? It was a live explosive minefield, because once the supplier knows that this guy will run it as he runs it, suppose something goes wrong, he's going to catch me in for so many billions or tens of billions of dollars, right? And I'll be fighting these cases. And if my personnel are in India, they might be arrested. This also found additional fuel or tailwind. This campaign to poison this liability law also found fuel or tailwind from a court judgment in June 2010. June, just as we were heading for a debate on this bill. In that court judgment in Bhopal, most people who were held responsible or who were tried for Bhopal gas tragedy were let off lightly. Only 7 employees were given light sentences ranging from 1 year to 2 years. That got activists furious. That also got Indian public opinion quite furious because the activists and public opinion had felt in any case that the Supreme Court in their larger settlement had allowed Union Carbide to get away with a very light compensation. So the mood was that look, if a relatively small company like Union Carbide could get away with this, what about the big mega corporations who will come in and set up nuclear power plants in India? They will also get away. So that mood was built at that point, and that's when this law was passed. First of all, putting the operator's liability to 1500 crores, but creating an unlimited liability claim on behalf of the operator from the supplier. As a result, no supplier came to India. So 15 years, no additional nuclear power has come to India except whatever we might have produced ourselves or whatever the Russians might have brought in, because Putin, he doesn't care what your liability laws are. He comes and keeps setting up his plants anyway. That is what you see in Kudankulam. 1,000 megawatt plants are there, and as Putin stated this time on his recent visit to India, 4 more are coming up there. That will become India's largest nuclear power plant. India's total capacity right now is 8.8 gigawatts. That is 8,800 megawatts, or just 1.6% of all of India's power production. It is very, very, very low. India has to do a lot better. This could not have happened but for changes in this liability law. And we saw signs of that changing, not under Modi 2, not under Modi 1, but definitely under Modi 3. Because many things changed in the world. And one of those things was that India now had reached a certain level of energy requirement. The world was moving on. New technologies had come into nuclear power. For example, small modular reactors, SMRs, they had come in. In the joint statement that Prime Minister Modi and Donald Trump issued after their meeting in Washington in the Oval Office in February 2025, this year they mentioned for the first time small modular reactors. They said both countries will now bring about changes so big American corporations could come and build mega nuclear power plants in India, and also both could develop and install advanced small modular reactors. That's something we spoke about in the CTC episode after that joint statement, of which we'll share a link with you. Now, once this happened, it was only a matter of time before India will amend its Liability Act. We had hoped this will happen in the last session, in the monsoon session. It did not happen. However, what we had not imagined was that the Modi government will bring not just amendments to the existing law, but they will bring an entirely new law with this very interesting acronym or name, the Shanti Act. Shanti Bill, which will become Shanti Act. In comparison, see the name of the law that UPA-2 had brought in, that was called Civil Liability for Nuclear Damage Act, CLND Act. You had put the word damage, liability in the law itself. So the signal it gives you mentally immediately is like, this is a dangerous thing, this is going to cause harm, and this law is there to protect you. That is not very reassuring. Modi government, on the other hand, has buried it into a larger law and called it the Shanti Act. That is good marketing and good politics as well. However, what does the law say and what change does it make? So the first thing that the law does, that it gives you legal basis now to let private sector to come into nuclear power generation. Private sector can do everything, the entire nuclear fuel cycle, except mining for uranium. That is still with the government. As yet, we don't know what happens in future. Until now, that's only with government. So private sector can get license from the government. They'll have to take a license. This is not a non-licensed Kota Raj thing. But once they get a license, they can produce electricity. They can sign joint ventures. They can get partners from outside. They can get technology from outside. They can import fuel from outside. Again, there is something that we have to understand there. Until the nuclear deal, there were severe limitations to India being able to import uranium even for its older nuclear power plant, say Rawat Bhata in Rajasthan, where India used to get fuel from Canada. After Pokhran Ban, they stopped it. India was always begging some country or the other for some fuel to keep these plants going. After the nuclear deal, that problem in a way ended because nuclear suppliers group now, Australia, Canada, Russia, they could all legally sell uranium to India. Now private companies can also import it. Again, we have to understand one very basic thing. It's one thing to import uranium and run it as fuel in your nuclear reactors to make electricity. That is uranium enriched to fuel grade. Enrichment for weapons grade is much higher. India does not have any weapons grade uranium. India has built its nuclear weapons program based on plutonium. Plutonium is a byproduct of burning uranium to produce energy. Now, India has farmed this plutonium or harvested this plutonium out of entirely Indian built, Indian owned and Indian controlled nuclear plants which are not under IAEA safeguards, that is International Atomic Energy Agency at Vienna. Now, you keep hearing about IAEA safeguards, particularly in the context of Iran. The 31 Indian installations, you go to IAEA's website, it will tell you 31 Indian nuclear installations, which includes 7 power plants with 26 reactors. These are under IAEA safeguards. Now, there are many others which are not safeguarded, including, for example, 2 units at Tarapur near Bombay, and also the oldest fast breeder reactor, Dhruva, again at Bark on the outskirts of Mumbai. In fact, it's not even the outskirts of Mumbai, it's like in the heart of Mumbai now. These have produced India's weapons grade plutonium. I am not telling you anything that Google will not tell you. And in any case, India and Pakistan have this treaty for a long time now, where on the 1st of January every year, they exchange lists of their own respective nuclear installations because both sides are committed, are treaty bound not to attack any of these installations. They did so this January 1 also, and they had done so also on January 1, 2020. That is months after Balakot as well. So there is no secret about this. And I will tell you that 31 Indian installations today are under IAEA safeguards, but there are multiple others that are not. What is the difference? The difference is that any nuclear plant where you will import fuel from outside, it will necessarily have to be under IAEA safeguards. Or if you have signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, then everything you have will be under IAEA safeguards. Now, these safeguards don't make your plant any safer, that you will not make it nevertheless. These safeguards are only to ensure that no uranium or no nuclear material or weapons grade material or fissile material is smuggled out of your plants. So these inspectors come, they do an audit, periodic audits. I had gone to do a story once, a long time back on Rawat Bhata near Kota, I think sometime in 1984, when that plant was shut down because of some problems and also because of uranium shortage. And I did meet an Algerian engineer in overalls with protection, a Geiger counter hooked onto his belt, who was actually an IAEA inspector working there. We happened to be staying in the same hotel. Kota didn't have many hotels those days. And we also chatted later in the evening to try and understand how IAEA works. So India has a bunch of unsafeguarded units as well, from which India can keep on producing weapons grade plutonium and anything else that it might need for its military programs. The first thing, therefore, this law does is it allows the private sector to come in and creates a regime in which they can operate. I told you mining only government will do. They can buy fuel, they can run their plants. Again, on spent fuel, how nuclear waste is disposed of, government will keep a significant amount of control. While the private sector is brought in, 4 things will be under government's control. One will be all mining of uranium. India, remember, had thought of nuclear energy very early. In 1948, the first Atomic Energy Act was passed. This is even before our constitution came in. In 1950, Indian Rare Earths Limited, a public sector company mining for nuclear minerals, that was set up. 1954, Atomic Energy Commission was set up. So all mining will remain with the government. That's one. Number 2, government will have the power of licensing. Nobody can start a nuclear plant without licensing. Number 3, government will keep custody of all spent fuel. Number 4, government will also have control over all heavy water, I presume, because it's dual use. It can be used also in weapons business. And also all waste disposal will be under government supervision. These are the 4 points where government will keep control. Then government will set up a nuclear liability fund. I'm getting into that because much of the debate now is that, okay, in 2010, you said operators liability was 1500 crores. Now you're saying 3,000 crores, big deal, right? The cost of cleanup after Fukushima, which happened because of the tsunami and almost a force 10 earthquake in 2011, January 2011, that is reckoned to be around $170 billion, right? Similarly, Chernobyl, if you also calculate the area, 2,600 square kilometers, which has become Chernobyl exclusion zone, 100 kilometers north of Kiev. If you add the value of all of that, then you might say it was $700 billion. So how come you are only saying 3,000 crores for the operator liability and no liability for the supplier? So clause 17B, clause 17B in the original law, where the operator could impose liability on the supplier, that has now gone. However, it's been qualified, because it's been qualified if the operator can prove anything mala fide or anything with criminal intent, it can still be done, but that will be a legal process. However, by this 3,000 crore limit, that is for insurance purposes, because everybody has to insure, and insurance cannot be for unlimited amount. So 3,000 crores is a limit for insurance. An operator can take insurance for more than that, even more than that, that is up to them. Second, what is liability in the law does not limit the compensation. Compensation will be decided by another board. Another board, statutory body has been set up, which will determine compensation to be paid in case of an unfortunate accident like this. If that amount is more, that amount will be paid not directly by the government. Government is taking the responsibility. That amount will be paid out of a larger fund, a very large fund maintained by the UN, under a UN body in Vienna. This is a convention over nuclear damage claims commission set up by the UN that India signed on 27th of October 2010. Under which India is also contributed to the fund. It's a very large fund. So if more compensation has to be given, then you can draw money from this fund also to give more compensation. Plus the government itself is setting up a nuclear liability fund. Once again, for legal reasons, for insurance reasons, you have to fix a limit. Even earlier, with the earlier law, there was a limit, and because of the limit, an insurance regime was created under the GIC companies. So these are Government of India owned insurance PSUs. So you will now see more of these insurance mechanisms coming up. Now there is other detail on this which I don't have to go into. You will see it on your screen. These damages or these liabilities are graded. If your plant is more than 3,600 megawatts, then it's 3,000 crores. If it's between 1,500 and 3,600, then it is less. So on and so forth. Please see the chart on your screen. However, the important thing is that the BJP has now not just passed this law, but has railroaded it without too much discussion and completely tossing opposition demands to send a bill as complex and with such implications to a select committee, to a parliamentary committee. They said nothing doing. They've just passed it. Obviously, the opposition is saying you are doing it under American pressure, under Donald Trump's pressure. Maybe that's a point. Maybe Donald Trump's pressure has given us that sense of urgency. That's the reason I had written that national interest several months ago saying, thank you, Donald Trump, for putting the gun on our heads, because India only reforms like that. If it's happened because of him, I'd say thank you, Donald Trump. I'll send him a thank you note, maybe with a box of Indian-made chocolates. However, it's also important that the world has changed. This world has changed, in which India now has to find a new position. India sees itself with its new comprehensive national power as a much more consequential player. India cannot be keeping the world away from here. This old psychology of dur hato ya duniya walo, Hindustan hamara hai, that is not going to work anymore. Now in Parliament, obviously in this debate, Congress and opposition people did troll the BJP people saying, you said this, you made a U-turn. Of course, the BJP has made a U-turn. It's a complete U-turn, but sometimes U-turns are good in politics. We said that about the India-Bangladesh border agreement. When Manmohan Singh government wanted to do it, the BJP opposed it. In fact, then I had written a national interest, dear Narendra Bhai, saying that you may be living in Ahmedabad, but you control this party. Get this done now. You have a friendly government in Bangladesh. Can you imagine the benefits India has from settling this border? BJP continued to oppose it, but once Narendra Modi came to power, this is among the first things he did on foreign policy, and that's a great blessing. India's border with Bangladesh is fully settled, including our maritime boundaries. Something similar has now happened with nuclear energy. Now, in the debate, Jitendra Singh, the minister in charge of science technology, Department of Atomic Energy, he justified this change by saying he accepted that Arun Jaitley had opposed the idea of no liability for suppliers in 2010, and that's how that 17B was put in. But he said time has changed, technology has changed, small modular reactors were never talked about, were not in existence in 2010. To that, I will add just one sentence in conclusion. Yes, times have changed. Yes, technology has changed. Yes, new factory-made small modular reactors have come in. These are made in a factory and shipped out. You don't have to build them on the site. But at the same time, more importantly, the government has changed, the power has changed hands, and politics has changed. And that is what has made the biggest difference. On which note, I will tell you a little Zail Singh story in conclusion. Gyani Zail Singh, as we know, served both in opposition and in power. He was Chief Minister of Punjab, Home Minister of India, and the President of India. He was also in the opposition in Punjab. At some point, some journalists asked him कि ज्ञानी जी जब आप पावर में थे तब तो आप इसको सपोर्ट करते थे, अब इसको आप अपोज कर रहे हो, इसको आप अपोज कर रहे हो, कल को आप पावर में आओगे, when you come to power, you will then support this. So what is this nonsense that goes on? So ज्ञानी जी said, ऐसे मेरी बात सुनो. एक बार मैं शिमला में सड़क पे जा रहा था. I was walking on the mall in Shimla once. So I saw somebody I knew walking on the right side of the road, a politician. So I said, भाई आपको पता है ना, you know that everybody has to walk on the left of the road. He said, yes. Then why are you walking on the right side of the road? I just like to walk on the right side of the road. He said, I said, but last year I saw you walking on the left with me. He said, no, last year I was in power. Now I'm in the opposition. So being in the opposition means that even if the rule is to walk on the left of the road, I will walk on the right of the road. The difference now is the BJP is now not in the opposition. BJP is in power, so it's walking on the correct side of the road.